Shalom, it's your brother Malcolm, giving all praises, glory, and honor unto Yahweh Bashem Shai, double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS, who are the true leaders of all Israel on earth today, and salutations to the Akim that are doing this work in truth and sincerity, risking their lives and their freedom to do so, and the confusion of face, brethren that are doing the same, and to you few Akwaf that are listening and learning. I'm going to complete a very critical lesson. Proving our points, just reading the comments on some of the recent videos on the subject, and the demons, the Edomites, are on there angry, and it's almost hilarious, man, how they try to agitate and poke, and then use Yiddish breakdowns, which are basically just false words and false definitions, given newspeak definitions, and how they try to so heavily connect ruddy to pink red flesh as an Edom. No, ruddy meant young first, and then it also later on is brownish red. All right, like when a person is brown, they have red hues, in their skin, and not pale as in the blood showing forth through their skin. Totally two different things, man. And it's funny because they try to connect Edom to Adam, like they're the same word, and it's Adam was from the dust of the ground, the dirt, and I'm looking at two pots full of dark soil, just a few feet away from me, and how you gonna get red out of this soil? It's hilarious. But let's start this with some scriptures, man. First one is Colossians 1:25 and 26, and it reads, "Where I am made a minister according to the disposition of power which is given to me for you to fulfill the word of power, even the ministry which have been hid from ages and from generations, but now is manifest to his saints." So the truth is coming out, man, because these things that these Edomites hid, and this is why they're so butthurt, and they're on the comment boards, and they keep trying to come with the same lies and bullshit. All right, and they're just being exposed, and they don't like it. And they were so proud of this Roman and Greek history, and now this Roman and Greek history is coming back to bite them in the butt. The same way they try to disconnect themselves from all the rape, rob, and murder of the KKK, from the Jim Crow, from slavery, how they try to rewrite it out of the books and try to say that the slaves came over here as indentured slaves. No, they came over here butt naked, cold, in ships upside down, stuffed in little holes, being raped and beaten, and on ships full of throw up, vomit, and afterbirth, rats and shit and piss. All right, lying in it for 6 months. Most of them didn't even make the trip, man. Millions of them died on the way over here, and a lot of them would jump overboard. Hell, they even changed the migration patterns of the great white sharks. The great white sharks still swim the different passages that the slave ships to this day, man. Hundreds of years later. All right, so they even changed the ecosystem of the oceans, man, with their deaths. This is Amos 3:7. And it reads, "Surely Yahweh power will do nothing but revealeth his secrets unto his servants the prophets, and the servants the prophets were not so-called white man." Not. Okay? And we're gonna let so-called white man continue to tell them themselves. This is back into the book of The History of the Jews by Henry Gratz, Volume 2. Okay? Published in 1885. And it has the history of John Hyrcanus. All right, the reign of Hyrcanus, 135 BCE, to the completion of the Babylonian Talmud, 500 CE, which that in the very title was telling you that it went from the law, statutes, commandments of the Bible to the Talmud, the Kabbalah ruling over it. Why? Because the Idumeans had infiltrated. The Idumeans, the so-called white man, had started calling themselves Jewish, because of a forced conversion. So let's read that real quick. Where are we? Just trying to find it real quick so I go straight to it. Oh, here it is. It's actually in the part, right here. What they call this part, I forget. It's like a breakdown of what's in the chapter. But it says, the crowning point of the period, war with Antiochus Sidites, siege of Jerusalem, treaty and peace, the Parthian war of John Hyrcanus, which we're going to read about that in the Apocrypha. The campaigns of Hyrcanus against the Samaritans and Idumeans. The Idumeans forced to embrace Judaism. And that was basically what puts the nail in the kingdom of the nail in the coffin of the kingdom of Judah, because eventually that became the bane of their existence, man. All right, so now we read that. This is the book of Maccabees, chapter 5 and verse 65. And after went Judas forth with his brethren and fought against the children of Esau. All right, in the land toward the south, where they smote Hebron and the towns thereof, and pulled down the fortresses of it and burned it. All right, now because the Romans had heard of this and were liking it, because the Romans were a warlike people. So were the Grecians. Why? They were the same people. And now Rome had risen up out of Greece, and the hostilities were beginning, and the Grecians were at war with one another, man. Okay. Why? Because they were living according to their blessing of Esau, which was by the sword. And that sword, and Esau had no problem going to war with his own people either. All right. If you had something that they wanted, they were coming to take it, man. They lived by the sword. All right. The sword meant that you were taking things by violence. Okay. It's like it says in Wisdom of Solomon, let their strength be their justice. It's not about what's right or wrong. It's that I have more guns, bigger swords, and more men, more supplies than you do. Okay. First Maccabees chapter 6, verse 2. And there was a very rich temple wherein were coverings of gold and breastplates, the shields of which Alexander, son of Philip of Macedonian, the king, had reigned first among the Grecians, had left there. All right. So when Alexander the Macedonian, which you go back to the first chapter, which was a different race of people, when he came in with the Edomites, the so-called white men, and took over the brown-skinned Etruscans, the real Greeks, and hijacked their culture and started calling themselves Greeks. Okay, and you could also read that history in the Josephus. The Josephus also gives you an account of that. See if I wrote down. Yeah, in the Josephus, it was called the Battle of Arbela, all right, or Gaugamela, all right. It's when all that took place, man, and those accounts can be found in the Josephus, okay. But I have now let's go to Maccabees, and I have two printouts here. One is from BibleStudyTools.com encyclopedia about Tryphon, which we're going to read about him. Copyright statement. These files are public domain, bibliography information. James MADD, General Editor, entry Tryphon, International Standard Bible, 1915. All right, and I'll let you read that info. You can freeze frame it, screenshot it, and as you see, it's from International Standard Bible Online, and so I'm going to read through this and then go to the Maccabees and read the scriptures that they prescribed and break it down to what's going on. Okay, so it says the surname Diotis. Actually, first, you know what? Jumped ahead of myself. Let me go back into this book and read a little bit more from this book first before I read that Salakia. I'm just going to read a couple different inserts of something that was going on. It said, this is page 4 in the history of the Jews. No great injury had been inflicted upon the state, and even the traces of the disaster that had been left were soon obliterated, for Hyrcanus now sent an embassy to Rome consisting of 3 delegates, Simon the son of Dastius, Apollonius the son of Alexander, and Diodorus the son of Jason, to entreat the Senate to renew with Jewish commonwealth and the friendly treaties which Rome lavishly accorded to the smallest nations. All right, let's jump over to page 5. And it says, fortune, however, changed sides since the time of Antiochus the Great and no longer favored the Seleucian dynasty. Antiochus lost his life in the campaign, and his brother Demetrius had this campaign, the brother who had been set at liberty by the king of Parthia at the time of the invasion of Antiochus to be opposed to him. And what happened was you had this Tryphon, which we're about to read about, who proclaimed Antiochus the sixth, the king, which is a different Antiochus. All right. When Alexander, and because we just read about Alexander, and not Alexander the Greek, but Alexander Balus, who was Tryphon. And when Alexander Bias died, let me just read it. This is up from the GMSMaccaBeanSpirit.com. Okay, GMSMaccaBeanSpirit.com. All right, let me just read that, and then I'm gonna go to the Apocrypha and break it all down. It says the king of Assyria, son of Alexander Bias, died in 142 BC. Like his predecessor, Antiochus VI was king only in name, because this Tryphon, this military leader, named him the king. Just named this Antiochus the sixth, the king, who wasn't in the royal line. It just was his name. All right, and that's what makes it so confusing when you read it in the Apocrypha, because you read Antiochus and you're thinking that it's from the Seleucus line, and this Antiochus wasn't, and I'm going to prove that. All right, and it says he was proclaimed king while still a minor in 146 BC as Diades, called Tryphon, former general of Alexander Balus. The Jews at first sided with Demetrius II, Nicanor, the rival for the throne, but the view of the vacillation, which vacillate means to be slave or make someone your servant, and the treacherous character of Demetrius, they held it advisable to give their allegiance to Antiochus. So the Jews didn't want to be, the Maccabees didn't want to be in a vacillation position. They didn't want to feel that way. All right. So they decided not to go with this guy and went with the other guy. It says, like his father, Antiochus VI was well disposed toward the Jews. He not only confirmed the Hasmonean Jonathan in possession of all that Demetrius had granted him, but he also appointed his brother Simon as military commander over the district reaching the Egyptian frontier. Antiochus' confidence in these brothers was not in vain. Jonathan defeated Demetrius' military commander in the plain of Hazor, while Simon captured the fortress of Beth-zur, which was declared for Demetrius. These and similar enterprises of Hasmonean were undertaken as much as is in interest of the Jews themselves as a king. For Demetrius was foe for both. See, there was a three-way battle going on. All right, the Edomites were warring with themselves, and then the Hasmoneans were warring with Demetrius. And Demetrius was going to war with this Tryphon dude. This Tryphon dude rose up out of Syria, man. And we're going to read this in the Apocrypha. Okay? And you know, you can kind of equate that to the way America and Russia are going at it today. Both being Edomites, but you got two different factions that are raising up to fight for world dominance, man. It's no different from back then. All right? The growth of the Jewish military power, however, seemed to alarm Tryphon, Antiochus' guardian. All right? And which Antiochus? The sixth, the one he appointed king. All right? Moreover, that Tryphon was just the mediating the removal of his ward and seizure of his throne. He feared, however, that Jonathan would oppose him in his plot on both moral and political grounds. He therefore gained possession. Well, that's the only part I had, but that was enough because it's going to lead us right into the Apocrypha. All right, so let's go to the Apocrypha. Good, I'm right in place now. Now I'm going to read a little bit of the one that I showed you before. It said, the sure name of Deodatus, the usurper of the Syrian throne. He was a native of Abyssinia and had been in service of Alexander Balus. On the death of Balus, Tryphon taken, and that was in 145 BC, Tryphon taking advantage of the complaints of the discontent among the troops of Demetrius the second, Nicator set up the younger son Ballas Antiochus the sixth as a claimant to the throne against Demetrius. 1 Maccabees 11:39. Let's read it. See how this Jewish encyclopedia matches, this secular history matches up with biblical history. This is 1 Maccabees 11:39. Moreover, there was one Tryphon that had been Alexander's part afore, who seeing that all the host murmured against Demetrius, went to Semelcu the Arabian and brought Antiochus, the young son of Alexander Ballas. So this Alexander Ballas and his son Antiochus were not in that Seleucus line. His son just happened to be named Antiochus. This is also mentioned in the book of Maccabees. Is why it was so confusing in the beginning, and I had to do research, deep research, to figure that, to find that out. Okay. It says the Jews under Jonathan came to the assistance of Demetrius in his difficulties against his revolting subjects. But Demetrius, when confirmed on his throne, soon made it apparent that he did not intend to fulfill his promise to his Jewish allies. In the scripture clearly says in Sirach 9:12, trust not thy enemy. See, they should have never made any allegiances with any of these Edomites. They should have let them Edomites war with each other and then attack them both when they're wicked. But prophecy when they were weak, but prophecy had to be fulfilled. This is Ecclesiastes 12 and 12. It says, set him not by thee, lest when he have overthrown thee, he stand up in thy place. Neither let him sit at thy right hand, lest he seek to take thy seat. And thou at the last shalt remember my words and be pricked therewith. Because they did take our seat. They've been calling themselves Jewish. All right. They started doing it way back then, man. And that was the problems between the Israelites and these Jewish converts, because these Jewish converts, even according to this history, they were translating it from the law, statutes, and commandments to the Bible, to the Babylonian Talmud. The reign of Hyrcanus, 135 BC, to the completion of the Babylonian Talmud, 500 CE. All right. Back to the article. It says, did I read that? Go back to the Maccabees Slakia. No, I haven't read it yet. Okay. It says that the Jews under Jonathan came to the assistance of Demetrius with his difficulties against his revolting subjects, but Demetrius, confirmed on his throne, soon made it apparent that he did not intend to fulfill the promises to the Jewish allies. Right. And that was that's in 1 Maccabees 11:53. So let's read it. Nevertheless, he disassembled all that he had ever spake, and estranged himself from Jonathan, neither rewarded him according to the benefits which he had received of him, but troubled him very sore. So after Jonathan fought and defeated all these Edomites that were coming against Demetrius turned on him. All right. And after the return, Tryphon, and with him the young child Antiochus, who reigned and was crowned. So he put Alexander Ballas' son Antiochus the sixth on the throne, man. Okay, and then Demetrius was warned with Tryphon. So that was and that was coming out of Syria. So those Syrian kings, these Edomites had taken over Syria, and they were warned against one another, man. And Jake was right in the middle of that. All right. Let's continue. All right, and you Edomites are through, man. You're through. They said Jonathan inflicted a severe defeat of the forces of Demetrius. The successes of Jewish leaders awakened the jealousy and suspicion of Tryphon, who determined to thwart the further plans of Jonathan to remove him as an obstacle in the way of securing the crown for himself. By an act of shrewd treachery, Tryphon captured Jonathan and Ptolemus and butchered all his followers. And that's in 1 Maccabees 12 and 48. So let's read it. This is 1 Maccabees 12 and 48. All right. Actually, I'm going to read 42 first and then jump down to 48. Now, when Tryphon saw that Jonathan came with the sore great force, he durst not stretch his hand out against him, but received him honorably and commended him to all his friends and gave him gifts and commended him as men of war to be obedient unto him as to himself. Jumping down to 48. Now, as soon as Jonathan entered to Ptolemais, they of Ptolemais shut the gates and took him, and all them that came with they slew with the sword. All right, and then sent Tryphon and host of footmen and horsemen in Galilee into the great plain to destroy all Jonathan's company. That's right here in the Holy Scriptures, man, right in the Apocrypha, and it's also written in this International Standard Bible Encyclopedia. And the entry was made in 1915 by this Dr. James. He was a general editor, and it was entered. The entry was made in 1915, and this was public domain, man. This also proves, and since this is an international Bible standard, it also proves that the Apocrypha was always a part of the Bible, and that they had studies tools set up to study it. Hence the reason why they decided to remove the Apocrypha, because it exposes who you red Edomites are, man. All right? Not ruddy, you red, pink, pale-fleshed Edomites. Okay? You're right. Let's see. Now undertook the conduct affairs and thwarted Tryphon in his attempts upon Jerusalem, whereupon he latter murdered Jonathan at Bascama in 1 Maccabees 13:1. So let's go to it. And here it is. Now when Simon had heard that Tryphon had gathered together a great host and invaded the land of Judea and destroyed it, all right, he saw the people was in a great trembling and fear, and went up to Jerusalem and gathered the people together, all right, because that's how Jonathan fell at the hands of Tryphon, man. All right, jumping to verse 14. And now when Tryphon knew that Simon was risen up instead of his brother Jonathan, and meant to join the battle with him, he sent messengers unto him, saying, all right, jumping down to verse 19. And he sent them the children and the 100 talents, howbeit Tryphon disassembled, neither would he let Jonathan go. All right. And after he came Tryphon to invade the land to destroy it, going around about by the way he leadeth to Adora, Simon and his hosts marched against him in every place wherever he went. And now that were in the tower sent messenger unto Tryphon to end that he should hasten his coming unto them in the wilderness and send the victuals. All right. Wherefore Tryphon made ready all his horsemen and came that night, but there fell a great snow, by reason whereof he came not. So he departed and came not into the country of Galilee. All right. Now let's jump up to 31, which was in here, and it reads, well, you know what? Let me read because Jonathan fell. Let me read that. Then sent Simon and took the bones of Jonathan his brother and buried them in Modin, the city of his fathers, and all of Israel made great lamentation. So there was a lamentation for Jonathan, one of the greats of the Maccabees, because he had fell at the hands of this Tryphon asshole. All right, they set him up. Okay, jumping down to verse 31, which was prescribed in his history insert. Now Tryphon dealt deceitfully with the young King Antiochus and slew him. He turned around and killed King Antiochus VI, the same one he appointed that they have appointed to the throne, man. Why? Because his whole goal, this Tryphon was very, very cunning and very patient, like all these Edomites were. Because they'll be your ally for years and turn on you when you're not expecting it, man. Why? Because their word is rust, man. The rust, you can't wipe that rust away, man. It said, trust not your enemy. Said, I'm not near you, man. They turned around and killed this. And this was the hardest part to figure out, because I'm thinking this was the Antiochus of the Seleucids line, and I'm searching for that history, and it wasn't there, because it was this other Antiochus from this line of Alexander Bias who the Seleucids were fighting. Okay, and it's all right here in the Apocrypha, man. Okay. And let me read it again, verse 31. Now Tryphon dealt deceitfully with the young king Antiochus and slew him. That was Antiochus VI. All right. And like I said, you can find it right here in the International Bible Encyclopedia. Okay. The insert was actually in 1901 by Dr. Smith. And this James guy right here was the general editor in 1915. All right, so it's actually, the insert was actually made in 1901. This history out of this International Standard Bible Encyclopedia. Okay, and which is public domain, man. All right, they said these files are public domain, bibliography information. So I imagine Esau probably going to go and delete this the same way he did the stuff with Wikipedia, man. All right, and all these things are connecting the so-called white man, Esau, Edom, to the Roman and Greeks, man, because that's who they are. And seeing now that shameful spewing, as pursuant to Habakkuk 2:16, is falling upon that glory, man. That glory is being turned to shame because you're finding out how treacherous and how wicked they were. Okay. Maccabees, this is 1 Maccabees 13:34 now. Moreover, Simon chose men and sent on to King Demetrius to end that he should give the land and immunity, because all that Tryphon did was to spoil. All right. Verse 36. King Demetrius unto Simon's the high priest and the friend of the kings, also unto the elders and the nation of the Jews sendeth greeting. All right. So at this point, the Israelites were now fighting with Demetrius against Tryphon. Okay. Let's read on and finish this out. It's back into the article, into the from the insert from the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia. Okay, so now Tryphon had claimed the throne for himself and killed this Antiochus VI. All right, which is right there in 1 Maccabees 13:31. So you read that when he slew Antiochus, that's a 6, which is Alexander Balas's son, not a Seleucian Antiochus. Okay. That's why it says the mysteries. All right. And it was given unto the prophets, man. The Lord gave us the resources and the minds to deal with this and to understand this, man. Not you other people, man. All right. From the apostles on down, man. All right. It says Simon now went over to the side of Demetrius, which we just read. And because this article is on point, man. It's matching up right with the Bible. Okay. It says, so Simon went over to the side of Demetrius with the on the condition that Judea would be free from tribute to Syria, a privilege, because remember, Syria broke out in the Civil War and they were actually helped fighting against them. A privilege that was rather in the power of Tryphon than of Demetrius to give. And so in the 170 year, 143 BC, was the yoke of the heathen taken away from Israel. 1 Maccabees 13:41. Let's read it. Thus the yoke of the heathen was taken away from Israel in the 170th year. Man, come on, man. All right. So this article is on point. I'm going to make sure I keep this article, man. This article would not, and I'm going to fold it and make sure it stays in my Bible, man. We're going to cut the hell out you heathens, man. All right. You exposed. All right. America, the Edomites here in America and in Europe are the descendants of this Tryphon and this Demetrius that we're reading about right now. Okay. And it says, and in 138 BC, Demetrius was captured in Mithras, the king of Parthia, 1 Maccabees 14:2. All right, now let's read it. This is 1 Maccabees 14:1. Now in 112th year, King Demetrius gathered his forces together and went into Media to get help to fight against Tryphon. But Arsus, the king of Persia and Media, heard that Demetrius was entered within the borders, and he sent one of his princes to take him alive. So Demetrius got captured, man. Verse 3, who went and smote the host of Demetrius and took him and brought him to Arsaces, but whom he was put inward. So he had been taken captive, man. Man, this article is on point. All right. It says, his brother Antiochus the seventh, Sidonius, continued to struggle against Tryphon. So if you didn't know any better, you would think that this was the son of the sixth, but they're two different bloodlines. You have to remember that. That's where the confusion came in, and that's why it took me so long to put this information together until I finally realized that in First Maccabees 13 and 31, that Antiochus was from a different bloodline. He wasn't from the line of Antiochus that we would normally be talking about when we're bringing up the scriptures. Okay, he was from a different Edomite line outside of that solution line. And now that one key point makes all the difference in his history, man. All right? Because I couldn't figure that out. How was he killing the Antiochus if they were fighting with Antiochus? It made no sense. All right, but now it does. It says, First Maccabees 14 and 3. Yeah, I read that one. It says, and continued to struggle against Tryphon with the aid of Simon, but later repugnant. Tryphon was obliged to flee before Sidonius, and this is in First Maccabees 15 and 11, where Antiochus refused to assist Simon. So these every time we would help Esau get into a position of power, they would turn on us. So let's read those two scriptures. First Maccabees 15 and 11, and we're about done here. We're about to wrap this up. And it reads, wherefore being pursued by the king Antiochus, he fled unto Duro, which lieth by the seaside. So there it is. All right. Tryphon was fleeing from Antiochus. All right. And 26, let's see. So he refused to as a matter of fact, let me just read, because this began the betrayal, because later on, Simon and his sons were killed in chapter 16. So let's go ahead and read from I'm going to read Maccabees 15 and 17 through the 25, and then we're done with this lesson, man. All right. This is First Maccabees 15 and 17. Now you've heard the story, what's brought us up to this point. Okay. It says, the Jews' ambassadors or friends and confederates came unto us to renew old friendships and league, being sent from Simon, the high priest, and from the people of the Jews. And they brought a shield of gold of 1,000 pounds. We thought it to be good, therefore, to write unto the kings and the countries that they should do them no harm, nor fight against them, their cities or countries, nor yet their enemies against them. It seems also good to us to receive the shield of them, if there would be any pestilent fellows that have fled from their country unto you, to deliver them unto Simon the high priest, that he may punish them according to their own law. So any traitors, any Israelites that went among our enemies, man, they were being sent back to us to be dealt with. All right, just like you scoffers who are of our own nation who come on the comment board, man. The death angels from on high are going to come get you, man. All right. The same things wrote he likewise also to Demetrius the king, and Attalus, and Arathias, and Arcedes, and Araces, and to all the countries to the Samsanes and the Lacedaemonians, and to Delos, and the Lacedaemonians were the Spartans. And it was also found in the writings that they were also Israelites, man. Okay, as a matter of fact, that's in First Maccabees the 15th chapter, 16th through the 16th and the 19th through the 20th verse, man. All right. The Lacedaemonians are Israelites, man, who were the Spartans. And so Esau definitely went there. And another reason why they hide this history, man, because they made money and market off the story of the Spartans, and they make them just, Greeks and Edomite Greeks, which they weren't. They were Israelites. Okay. And to the Delos and Myndius and Syacon and Kara and Samus and Pamphylia and Lycia and Helicarnus and Rhodus and Philisius and Cos, the side of Aradus, and Gartina and Sindus and Cyprus and Cyrene. And so these letters were all sent out that any traitors Israelites were there had to be brought before Simon, man. And the copy hereof they wrote to Simon the high priest. So Antiochus the king camped against Dora the second day, assaulting continually to make it engines of war. Engine of war is like a battle ram, man. By which the means he shut Tryphon, that he could neither go in or out. So thus began the fall of Tryphon. And once Tryphon was moved out the way, when you go to verse 16, which I've already read, chapter 16, he then turned on Simon and he killed Simon and his sons, man. And that's in when you can read that in 1 Maccabees, the 16th chapter. I suggest you read the whole thing. So with that, I hope this was edifying and revealing, and that some more understanding has been given on chapter the 1 Maccabees chapter, basically chapter 11 through 15, man. And that history with that war, that three-way war, you know, with basically that civil war between the Edomites, between Tryphon and Seleucus VI, son of Alexander Ballas, versus Demetrius, Nicanor, and the Seleucids, which had a different set of Antiochus. The different Antiochus, you know, you had Antiochus the first, the second, all the way up to the seventh, but it was a whole different line. Okay, so now, you know, with that, I hope there was some clear understanding on that. Secular history matches up, and hey, you Edomites are exposed. Shalom.